The blood drained from my face as I pressed my ear against the study door. My father's voice cut through the wood like a blade. "Vanessa will smile while we do it, or she's out, simple." My sister Olivia's laugh followed, sharp and cruel. "It's perfect. Everyone will be there to see it." My mother's murmur of agreement made my stomach twist into a knot so tight I couldn't breathe. The family Christmas gathering had become something else. The one I'd spent months planning and paying for wasn't a celebration. It was an ambush. They were going to humiliate me in front of everyone, then discard me like I'd never mattered. My name is Vanessa Reed. I'm 29, and I've been my family's invisible backbone for years. This is the story of how I stopped holding up a house that was never mine. The betrayal shouldn't have surprised me. I'd spent my life being useful, not valued. Every family dinner I'd cooked while they toasted someone else's success. Every holiday I'd organized while they claimed the credit. The kind of ache that makes your teeth meet too hard, like the only thing holding you together is bite pressure. I moved away from the door before they could discover me, my mind racing faster than my heart. I'd only come to drop off the final catering invoice, using my key when no one answered the doorbell. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked away seconds that suddenly felt precious, each breath calculated, each step planned. I wasn't going to scream or cry. Emotions were luxuries they didn't deserve from me anymore. For a week, I worked in silence. Phone calls at midnight when no one would notice. I used my position as event planner to contact all vendors and caterers directly, leveraging my name on the contracts and my personal credit card on the deposits. Vendors contacted and redirected. I created 2 lists, one for what I owed them, nothing, and one for what they owed me, everything. The family Christmas celebration would proceed exactly as planned, just not for them. On December 24th, my mother called, artificial sweetness dripping from every word. "Vanessa, where are you? Everyone's waiting." I laughed, a sound so unfamiliar it almost startled me. Don't wait for me, and don't wait for the catering either. Silence stretched across the line like ice forming on a window. Then, "What do you mean?" I didn't answer. In my apartment, the radiator hummed against the December chill. Outside, the air smelled of chimney smoke and possibility. I opened the window and let the cold climb in, steadying myself against what came next. You can measure a lifetime in what you're willing to swallow. I was done swallowing. They had built the stage for my humiliation themselves. Warm lights strung across the dining room, glossy place cards at every seat, a microphone ready for my sister's rehearsed roast that would end with my father announcing my removal from the family business. What they had forgotten was that the daughter they had relegated to fetching napkins and planning parties knew exactly where the invoices lived, where the accounts were managed, where the real power resided. I set my phone down as it vibrated with another call. My father, this time, declined. A text from my aunt. "Bring the cranberry tart at least." A smile tugged at my lips. The tart was already being served at the homeless shelter downtown. So were the catering trays, each one labeled meticulously. Salmon, main table. Roast, head table. Every single item I had ordered and paid for, redirected. I zipped my coat, picked up an unmarked envelope, and stepped into the night. The cold air sliced against my cheeks, but it felt cleaner than anything that lingered inside my family's house. I walked quickly, boots crunching in fresh snow, the envelope pressed against my palm like evidence at a trial. Inside were receipts, photocopies of every bill, every catering deposit, every dollar I had invested in their so-called family Christmas. I carried them the way someone carries a match before striking it. After a 20-minute drive, I parked a block away from their house, timing my arrival for 8:30 p.m. when I knew dinner would be starting. Through frost-tipped trees, I could see their house glowing like a theater set. Cars lined the street, exhaust curling upward, muffling the hum of laughter that spilled from open windows. For a moment, I just stood there, listening to my sister's voice ring out, full of false brightness. "She's always late. Wait until you hear what we have planned for her." The room erupted in anticipatory laughter. I let the sound wash over me, then harden into resolve. I moved toward the side entrance, the service door where I'd carried trays in and out for years, invisible to their guests. My key still worked. Of course it did. No one changes locks for the daughter they expect to remain obedient. I slipped inside, immediately enveloped by warm air scented with cinnamon candles. My heart pounded in rhythm with the clinking glasses from the dining room. The space was decorated like a magazine spread, polished silverware gleaming, a mountain of wrapped gifts under the tree, my family gathered in their finery, all red and gold. My mother raised her hand for silence. When she finally shows, we'll toast. Then. Her smile was the same one she'd used to cut me down since I was 10. I leaned against the doorway, invisible for a moment, watching them rehearse their cruelty like it was theater. That was when I realized. Tonight, I didn't need to speak louder than them. I only needed to let their stage collapse under its own weight. I gripped the envelope tighter, then stepped forward. The floorboard creaked beneath my boot. Dozens of heads turned at once. My sister's smirk froze halfway. The silence was sudden and sharp, like the pause before a chandelier falls. Every pair of eyes latched onto me as if I had broken a spell. I didn't rush. I let the silence grow long enough to make someone shift uncomfortably in their chair. My sister recovered first, her voice pitched high with the confidence of someone who thought she'd already won. "Well, look who finally decided to show up," she sneered. "Don't worry, everyone." We saved the best joke for last. A few cousins chuckled nervously, waiting for the cue to laugh harder. But something about the way I stood, coat still on, snow melting at my boots, kept them from going too far. I tilted my head slightly. "Funny," I said softly. "That's exactly what I came here to say." My father's brow furrowed. What's that supposed to mean? His voice carried authority, but I saw the faint twitch in his jaw. I set the envelope on the nearest table, sliding it across polished wood until it stopped in front of my mother's champagne flute. Every catering order, every deposit, my money, not yours. I kept the receipts. I paused, letting the words sink in. "Tonight's feast is already being served elsewhere. Hope you brought an appetite for leftovers." A murmur rippled through the room. My mother's hand trembled as she pulled the papers halfway out. My aunt leaned over, whispering, then gasping. My sister's laugh cracked. "You're bluffing. She's bluffing." But the truth was inked in bold numbers and signatures. The crowd didn't need my words, just the spreading silence as realization traveled like spilled wine across a white tablecloth. I stepped closer, letting the glow from the tree light one side of my face, the other swallowed by shadow. "You wanted a stage. You built it. But the punchline isn't mine. It's yours." My cousin coughed, uncomfortable. Someone shifted in their chair. The room tilted, the power sliding away from the center of the table where it had always resided. Then the doorbell rang, a sharp, echoing chime. Every head snapped toward the sound, relief sparking in their eyes, as if a guest might rescue them from the weight of what I'd revealed. But I already knew who was waiting outside. The chime echoed again, long and insistent, until my sister finally barked, "Someone get that!" A cousin scurried off, shoes squeaking against polished wood. The door opened, and in swept the December air along with 3 men in dark coats, their arms loaded with boxes, stamped with a logo no one at that table recognized. "Delivery for the Reed family," one of them announced, his voice steady and practiced. Confusion swept the room. My father stood, chest puffed, trying to reclaim control. "We didn't order anything." One of the men set a box squarely in the center of the dining table, right on top of my mother's centerpiece of poinsettias and candles. "This is prepaid, signed by Vanessa Reed." All eyes darted back to me. I didn't flinch. I slipped my gloves off slowly, one finger at a time, letting the silence draw taut. "What? What is this?" My mother's voice cracked. "Your Christmas dinner," I said. "Or what's left of it. Everything you thought was yours, rerouted." I tapped the box. "These are empty packages." Tonight, the shelters eat like royalty. Gasps scattered across the room. My aunt covered her mouth. My cousin muttered something about the salmon. My sister went pale, then red, then pale again. My father's fist slammed the table, rattling glasses. "You ungrateful child! No, my voice cut sharp, colder than his. Not ungrateful, unpaid, unnoticed, unwanted, until you needed a servant. I swept my gaze across the guests, their curiosity curdling into discomfort. Look closer. The only humiliation here isn't mine. The men in coats tipped their hats and left, snow swirling behind them as the door clicked shut. Silence settled, thick as frost. The smell of extinguished candles stung the air where the boxes had crushed them. My family stared at the unopened package like it was a coffin lid. I let the moment breathe, the weight of truth pressing down. Then, with deliberate calm, I pulled out a single folded card from my pocket, one they hadn't seen yet, and laid it face down in front of my sister. Her fingers hovered over the card, hesitant for the first time in her life. My sister, who always tore into gifts like a queen impatient for jewels, now looked as if a single touch might scorch her. The guests leaned forward, whispers hissing like restless snakes. She flipped it open. The color drained from her face. This isn't real. Oh, it's real, I said, my voice low but steady. Every invoice, every bill in your name, every charge I let slide while you played princess. The credit cards you thought were unlimited? They're gone. I've canceled the accounts. I let the words drip slowly like melting icicles. Frozen. The murmur grew louder. One uncle squinted at the paper, then at her. Wait. This wedding fund? It's empty? My sister's throat bobbed as she swallowed hard. She tried to laugh, but the sound fractured mid-breath. She's bluffing. She's just jealous. I shook my head. Check your phone. Try swiping tomorrow. Or better yet, ask the florist who called me this morning. Her hands shook as she dug into her clutch, pulling out her phone. The glow of the screen lit her face. One glance, and her lips parted in a silent, broken gasp. Around the table, eyes widened as they caught on. I wasn't bluffing. My mother clutched my father's arm, her voice sharp with panic. You let her... No, I cut in, stepping forward, my boots clicking on the wood. You made me. Years of standing in the corner, years of pretending crumbs were enough. Tonight was supposed to be my humiliation. I only mirrored yours back to you. The room had shifted completely. Guests who had come for laughter and spectacle sat stiff, unease flickering in their eyes. A few even looked at me not with pity, but with something closer to respect. My sister's phone slipped from her hand and clattered against the floor. The sound cracked through the silence, and in that sharp, stunned quiet, I whispered just loud enough. Merry Christmas. Then I turned toward the staircase, because my next move wasn't here at the table. It was upstairs. The stairs creaked under my boots, each step louder than the last. Behind me, voices rose, my mother calling my name, my father demanding I come back down right now. But none of them followed. Fear or pride kept them glued to their seats. The hallway smelled faintly of pine and old wood polish. Family portraits lined the walls, smiling faces in matching sweaters, a gallery of lies. At the end of the hall was my old room, the door still painted in the pale lavender I'd chosen at 12. I pushed it open. Everything was untouched, staged like a museum exhibit. My trophies, my books, even the cracked snow globe I'd begged to keep, all frozen in time, like I'd never grown beyond the version of me they preferred. But tucked under my bed, exactly where I'd left it, was the small lockbox no one ever thought to check. The key turned easily. Inside lay a stack of papers, neatly folded. Not bills or receipts this time, but ownership documents, shares of the family business. I'd bought them quietly year after year with the money they never asked about, using the salary I'd earned working at the company but rarely spending. While they mocked me as the outsider, I became the silent partner they never noticed. I traced the embossed seal with my thumb, my chest steady. Downstairs, laughter had gone brittle, anxious. They still thought the damage ended at dinner. They had no idea the foundation itself was already mine. Footsteps sounded at the base of the stairs, hesitant, light, my sister's voice trembling now. Vanessa, what are you doing up there? I slipped the papers into my coat pocket and stepped back into the hallway. The tree lights downstairs flickered against the wall, distorted shadows stretching long. "I'm just collecting what was always mine," I called down, my tone calm, almost gentle. A pause. Then her whisper floated back, breaking on the edges of disbelief. "You can't. You wouldn't." But she knew. She always knew I was quieter, not weaker. I descended one step at a time, the weight of the papers heavy in my pocket, my final card, and this time, the silence followed me, not them. By the time I reached the bottom step, the living room had changed. The laughter was gone, replaced by restless murmurs, the kind that coil in a room when people realize the story isn't playing out as expected. My parents stood at the center like stranded monarchs, brittle crowns slipping. My sister lingered by the table, pale, her eyes fixed on my coat pocket as if she could see the edges of the documents through the fabric. I moved closer, steady, unhurried. Every gaze followed. The lights from the tree flickered, casting gold halos on the walls, but the warmth in the room had bled out. My father tried first, his voice hard with strain. "This is family business, Vanessa. You don't parade it in front of guests." I let the weight of his words fall uselessly between us. "Exactly," I said. "Family business." And lucky for me, I pulled the papers free and laid them flat on the table, right on top of the unopened box. "I own more of it than you ever bothered to notice." Gasps rippled. Someone stood to see better. My mother's hand trembled over her necklace, her knuckles white. My aunt whispered, "Thomas, is this true?" My father's face flushed crimson. "Those are forged. They're notarized," I cut in. "Every percentage accounted for. While you mocked me, I invested. While you planned to push me out, I was already inside." My sister's voice cracked. "Why? Why would you do this?" I looked at her, not with hate, but with something sharper. "Because you never saw me. You only saw what I could serve. Tonight was supposed to be my ending. Instead, it's your mirror." The room went still, heavy with realization. Guests shifted uneasily, a few glancing toward the door as if escape might spare them the discomfort of watching a family unravel. I stepped back, sliding the papers into my mother's untouched cranberry glass. "Merry Christmas," I whispered again, this time not bitter, but final. And then I turned toward the door, my boots carrying me through the cold draft of truth that now clung to every corner of that house. The front door groaned as I pulled it open, and for a breath, the house clung to me. Warmth, chatter, the faint sting of pine candles. But it wasn't mine. It never had been. Snow swept in, curling around my ankles, reminding me the night was wide and waiting. Behind me, voices rose, desperate. My mother's strained call. "Vanessa, wait. We can talk." My father's bark, brittle with pride. "You'll regret this stunt." My sister's plea, fragile, breaking. "Please don't leave it like this." I paused on the threshold, one hand on the frame. For the first time, I wasn't trembling. Their words didn't pierce. They slid off me like snow melting on a window pane. I turned just enough to see their faces, their perfect tableau now fractured, fear and disbelief carved into each expression. "I didn't burn this house down," I said softly. "I just stopped holding it up." A silence thicker than any storm followed. Guests stayed frozen, caught between sympathy and awe. Some looked at me with quiet nods, as if they understood. Others couldn't meet my gaze, ashamed they had laughed earlier when cruelty was rehearsed as comedy. I stepped into the snow. The door shut behind me with a heavy click. Outside, the world was crisp and untouched. Street lamps glowed against falling flakes, the air sharp with freedom. For once, the cold didn't bite. It cleansed. In my pocket, the documents pressed warm against my side. Proof not of revenge alone, but of reclamation. They wanted to write my story as humiliation. Instead, I walked away carrying the pen. I didn't need applause. I didn't need them to say I was right. The quiet truth was enough. I had broken free without breaking myself. As I reached the corner, I heard the faint echo of church bells striking midnight. Christmas had arrived, not theirs, mine. And with each toll, I felt lighter, as if the snow itself whispered, "You are no longer theirs to diminish." I kept walking, leaving footprints they could never follow. 3 months later, the lawyers finalized the paperwork. The family business restructuring was complete, with me as majority shareholder. My father took early retirement, my mother rarely speaks of me, and Olivia's wedding was downsized to a courthouse ceremony. We maintain polite, distant contact at quarterly board meetings, where I now sit at the head of the table. Sometimes healing means permanent separation, and I've found peace in the distance between us. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles, zero cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one.